How does the most popular podcaster in the world, Joe Rogan, go from this?
You understand, mother, because the New Testament is utter horse. It's created by a bishop and a fucking emperor. That's a fact. A lot of that God talk is a type of arrogance.
It is definitely a type of arrogance, and it's also a way that people establish the moral high ground.
Yeah.
They establish a dominant social position over you. And the people love to do that. They love to do that with their pious attitude. What they're doing is by them accepting these religious tenets, they are somehow superior. I just read the story about a guy who was magic, who could turn water into wine, who could heal people. What did he do with fish? Did he fucking give people fish or some shit? Make some fish? The whole thing's so stupid. Just stop and think how fucking stupid that is. It's not thinking. Because if you're thinking, you can't accept it. Like, hit the brakes. Aren't you grown adults? Like, you guys you're into nonsense? So you're into nonsense. Is that what this is?
Because you think someone walked on water? Do you believe in the literal translation? Are you an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy? Well, the New Testament. No, well, the New Testament was made by Constantine, who was a Roman emperor who wasn't even Christian. He didn't even believe it. He became a Christian on his deathbed.
To this.
Atheists, they vary just like Christians vary. But the worst versions of them are essentially believers in the religion of atheism.
Right.
They worship the concept of there being no God, and this is it. When you die, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And that to me is always so arrogant. Just the fact that you exist at all is so bizarre and so spectacular. The idea that you know for sure that when the lights shut out that's a wrap, like, because there's no evidence of the contrary. Well, okay.
Kind of assuming your conclusion there.
Absence of evidence is not evidence. It's especially when you're talking about something that's as bizarre as death. And especially when you have people that have near-death experiences that are radically similar.
Yeah.
Those are really weird.
So that's a genuine Egyptian papyri that I made. I cut it out for you, and then I transcribed the text on that manuscript. So when we're talking about what is potentially our oldest evidence for the New Testament, this manuscript that most likely comes from Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, is the one that usually is universally accepted as our oldest one. And that contains John 18. Jesus is on trial before Pilate, and Jesus says, everyone who follows the truth, who is following the truth, follows me. And on the back has the words of Pilate saying, what is truth?
That's unbelievable. Wow. That's so fascinating. When you're saying that the book of, was it the book of Isaiah?
Yeah.
That the same book is exactly the same, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
If you just imagine the sheer number of illiterate people, the sheer number of days that have to go by where people are telling the story exactly the same, and that it's entrusted in the hands of these very few people that are so dedicated to it that they get the exact words right 1,000 years later, pretty bananas. It's really easy to lean into the Anunnaki stuff, but the actual real that we know is 100% the accounts of people that lived back then.
Yeah.
That to me is as fascinating, if not more, than even we were made by aliens. Like,
Yeah.
all of it is bizarre.
If you guys thought the biggest slap in world internet history was the slap that Wesley Huff gave in a very gentle Canadian way to Billy Carson, well, you guys have another slap to expect, because Joe Rogan got hit by God's truth and God's love through the graciousness of Wes Huff, who is a biblical scholar and came on Joe Rogan's podcast a few weeks ago, right before the close of the year 2024. I did a live video of the whole podcast here on my channel. You can find it right here, somewhere up here. But I want to show you guys some really important clips. If you guys didn't catch the full 3-hour podcast, they go through a lot of topics between even the pyramids, Göbekli Tepe, the creation of the Babylonian account, Sumerian versus the biblical account, similar things that Wesley talked with Billy Carson, if you saw that debate that went super viral. But I want to show you guys some of the most important clips of the podcast that Wes went on with Joe Rogan, where he challenged Joe on who Jesus is, and also to show Joe how we can actually trust the biblical manuscripts, that they weren't written hundreds and thousands of years later, as Joe previously claimed a few years ago in the clips that you've seen in the beginning. So tune into this incredible interview and these clips, because they will show you what exactly has been happening to Rogan as his gears have been shifting slowly but surely, because he's had many people like Stephen Meyer, a scientist, who presented the case that the God hypothesis is coming back in science, that there's so much complexity in the universe and even the cells that you cannot explain it just by gradual changes of evolution. And he's had other Christian guys on, but this is the first time in the Joe Rogan podcast history, unless he's hiding some episodes that haven't been released, that he's had a soon-to-be PhD biblical scholar who's traveled into the same sites Billy Carson traveled to, who actually tells through the historicity and verisimilitude of biblical history, archaeology, and the facts surrounding who Jesus was, his life, death, and even the resurrection, showing to Joe Rogan that you don't have to be stupid or throw your brains out to believe in these fantastical truths, because C.S. Lewis once said that Jesus is the myth come true. He's the true myth. Even Jordan Peterson is saying that Jesus is one of the best archetypes in existence of humankind, what humans should strive to. But at the same time, you're going to hear what Wes says about Jordan Peterson as well. So watch this.
So what do you think of Jesus? Like, in terms of your own journeying and trying to find answers to ultimate questions. What do you think of the historical person of Jesus?
Well, it certainly seems like there's a lot of people that believe that there was this very exceptional human being that existed. So the question is, what does that mean? Does it mean he was the Son of God? Does it mean he was just some completely unique human being that had this vision of humanity and this way of educating people and spreading this ideology that would ultimately change the way human beings interact with each other forever? So is he the Son of God? Well, are we all? That's another question, right? Do we all have that inside of us? Do we all have that ability to change everything around us inside of us? Do we all have that unique connection to the divine? And is he a representation of the best version of that, or was he an actual person that was the Son of God? And is it important?
Yeah.
I don't know. What it can do to people is offer them a very unique way to change the way they feel about the world itself. So it does work. If you do live like a Christian and you do follow the principles of Christ, you will have a richer, more love-filled life. So it is true, but you have to submit to this concept that this guy was the child of God who came down to earth, let himself be crucified, came back from the dead, explained a bunch of stuff for people, and then how many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus's ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them. I think I really like the way that Jordan Peterson articulates it, but I think he misses the forest for the trees.
How so? In
that he sees Jesus as an archetype, and I don't think actually even Jesus gives you the opportunity to see him as the archetype. Because I have this love-hate relationship with all of Peterson's stuff, because he seems to get so much right where he walks up to the line, but he doesn't want to cross over.
And is the crossover, you think, connected to a life in academia? Or
no.
What do you think it is?
I wonder, and I'd love to talk to him about this, like, how do you remedy this issue that because he seems to think that the concept of Jesus as an example is more important than the actual flesh and blood first century itinerant Jewish preacher who was crucified and rose from the dead physically, which is the claim of the Gospels and the rest of the New Testament. That's an example for us to look on and live by. But I actually think that Jesus condemns moralism. And ultimately what I see Peterson doing is looking at Jesus as a moral example. And if Jesus is nothing but a moral example, then you can save yourself and you don't actually need a savior. And so I think actually Jesus would have critiqued that because Jesus was very against moralism.
How do you define Jesus being against moralism? Like, what do you mean by that exactly?
Jesus looks at the religiosity of his day with like particular groups like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who are these other groups of Jews during his day. So like the Pharisees, who are like lay scholars, and the Sadducees, who are professional priest scholars. And he's constantly critiquing the fact that they have this hypocritical religiosity to them. Like Jesus critiques them for that because he says, you're trying to do everything right and you're missing the point. So when he says, you have heard it said, do not commit murder. But I say to you, anybody who harbors a hate for their brother in their heart has already committed murder. And what he's getting to is like, what's the intention? What's the meaning of the law that God gives to you? Because the law is like a mirror. It shows you how dirty you are. But his critique is he's like, you guys are trying to clean yourself with a mirror. That's stupid. It's just if anything, it's going to make you more messy. Like, get in the shower. The law is not what cleans you. The law is what reveals that you're dirty. And so in that sense, I think, if Jesus is a moral example, it actually misses what I think Jesus actually said about what his purpose was, in that you can't do enough to actually live up to the standard that God holds you to. And so if you keep striving, you're actually going to wear yourself out and be exhausted.